you can build the thing and have the tooling and have the production, have it all great, but if no one's there to buy it, who cares?
Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Farah Ali Show, where we dive deep into the minds of accomplished entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Farah Ali, and be ready to gain valuable insights as we take you on a journey of inspiration and wisdom. Today, our guest is Mike Moyer, who has authored a brilliant book on partnerships. He is also a serial entrepreneur, has written several books, and is currently a professor at Northwestern University teaching entrepreneurship. Enjoy the show. Hi, Mike. Welcome to the Farah Ali Show. How are you?
I'm very good. Thanks for bringing me in to talk about my favorite topic.
Very good. Well, why don't you start off with just telling us a little bit about your career?
My career, well, I have one of those typical ADHD entrepreneurship careers where I bounce around from job to job and project to project, probably not too much like you for real estate. I started my first company when I was in college, and I went on to start companies after that. And I kind of spent the first half of my career jumping from real job to startup to real job to startup. And about 12 years ago, I decided to strictly do startup work. And so today I write books and I teach entrepreneurship at Northwestern University. And I have a couple of companies and I consult with startups on equity splits and marketing in a variety of industries.
And the companies that you have, what are those companies?
One's a software as a service for Slicing Pie, which we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
And the other is a camping gear company that makes mosquito net tents for Boy Scout camps.
Oh, very cool. So you are a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah, I started with my son when he was a Boy Scout, and so it's kind of taken off. So we supply to Boy Scouts of America.
Okay, great. So before we actually get to know a little bit more about you, I kind of want to know from you what your take on is. And I think the book that you wrote is phenomenal, Slicing Pie, the model. And I want your take on why you think most partnerships fail, business partnerships.
Well, partnerships fail for lots of reasons. One of them is because people think they can predict the future. People think that we go into business together and we're both going to be perfectly reliable and perfectly hardworking and we do exactly the same amount of work. And things just don't turn out that way. You know, people get married, they get divorced, they get busy, get hobbies, they get better jobs somewhere else, they lose interest in projects, they have all kinds of things going on. They get sick, their kids get sick. There's all kinds of things that get in the way of performing the way you want to perform. So partnerships fail because I think people start with one thing in mind, and then what actually happens is different. And when that difference goes by, they have to rethink what their partnership's all about. They have to rethink what their relationship's all about. And so then it often, because there's money involved, it often goes sideways because people can't get along that well.
Yeah, and I've noticed that with partnerships, like you could know somebody for years, and you have a completely different relationship with them, and then you get into a partnership in a business, and they're completely different.
Right, I've seen best friends no longer friends anymore. I've seen brothers and sisters no longer friends anymore because they got into money relationship that didn't work out. Yeah,
so what do you think the key qualities somebody should have in order to have a good partnership?
Well, I don't know. What I try to do is just take the partnership for the partnership's sake. What people there's facts and there's opinions. The future is an opinion. What we're going to do in the future is an opinion. No matter how bright-eyed and bushy-tailed you are, whatever you say you're going to do is just an opinion. Facts, what you've already done. So you can observe facts. You can observe what's already been done. So a good partnership has a history of doing well. So if you're getting into a new partnership with someone, it's important you have to rely on their promises, but all you can really rely on is what they've actually done. So don't worry too much about it. Just have a way of getting out of it if it doesn't turn out the way you want to. So that's what I try to do with my work is give people a way to get out of a partnership if it doesn't work very well and stay in a partnership if it does work very well.
You actually made a good point, and a lot of people don't think about this, is, people get into partnerships and the future is an opinion.
Right.
And what they've done in the past is facts, correct?
Right.
So for me, if I'm going to partner with somebody, I'm going to pay attention to what they've already done. And that's what I'm going to assess that person on, is based on their experience and not all the hype and all the excitement that somebody thinks they're going to do in the future.
Right.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people who get really, really excited, but they don't have anything to back it up.
There's a great fable I heard about this snake who asked a man to give him a ride swim across the river and take him. And the guy said, "If you're a snake, you'll bite me." He said, "I promise I won't bite you. I need a ride across the river. I need someone to carry me across the river." So the man agreed. And halfway across the river, the snake bit him. And he said, "You bit me." And the snake said, "You knew I was a snake when you picked me up. Of course I bit you." So what the past is much more better indicator what their future is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very important. And then also when it comes to people's qualities, right? Like for me, when I partner, if I'm considering partnering with anyone, now that I've had some experience with partnerships, not only am I looking at their experience in their past, but I'm also looking at who they are as people. Are they fair? You know, do they have the skill set that I'm looking for? For example, like let's just say, and I've seen this happen so much in real estate partnerships where people will partner with people just to partner with them, and they're not even paying attention to what each other are bringing to the table. So I've had to actually talk to people and talk them out of partnerships because I'm like, wait, what is the other partner bringing to the table? Because they're bringing the deal, they're bringing the money, they're bringing the experience, and they're like, well, I don't want to handle the rehab portion of it. And I'm like, well, why don't you just get a GC? Yeah, maybe you'll pay $5,000 to $7,000 more, but it's a lot less than giving 50% of the property away, right? So, like, what are some of those not skill set, but those values that you look for in a person if you're going to partner with them?
Well, I look for people who get logic. With the model I work with, Slicing Pie, you have to kind of get it. Once you agree to the logic of the model, it's obvious that it works. If you still don't want to do it, that means you don't get it, or you don't want to use it. You want to take advantage of somebody, and it's important. Any partnership is to define it. The partnership you're talking about is the partnership where we go in together and we accept risk on a project, and we don't get paid until the project reaches a conclusion or starts generating money. Versus a partnership where I hire you and I pay you, a weekly salary. That's a different kind of partnership. That's just an employee-employer relationship. But in a partnership where we both take risk, I have to understand what the nature of that risk is. And risk is knowable because business is quantifiable. I can quantify everything in business. This microphone has a price. These little balls have a price. This electricity has a price. Everything has a price. So I can know what's been contributed so far. As long as I can realize that I'm not a magical leprechaun, all I can do is give what I can give, then partnerships will go well. So I look for people who think rationally and work based on what they know rather than what they think is going to happen.
Let's do this. So for our viewers, let's kind of break down the whole slicing my model. Let's break down the slicing pie model. Okay, so for the viewers, let's break down the slicing pie model and explain to them in simple terms the whole concept behind the model that you developed.
So it's very simple. There's two ways to divide up ownership or equity in a project. There's the slicing pie model and literally anything else. And that's because slicing pie model is based on logic of fairness. So here's an example of what's logical in fairness. Do you know how to play blackjack, the game blackjack?
I think I used to, but it's been a while.
21.
So I don't remember.
Let's pretend that you and I are going to play blackjack together as a team, not opponents as a team. We're playing against the dealer together.
Yeah.
And we're going to split the winnings 50-50 because we're friends. So we're going to shake on it, fist bump here.
All right.
And we go to the table, and we each put $1 on the same hand of blackjack. We don't know if we're going to win. We don't know how much we're going to win. We don't know how long it's going to take to win. The future is unknowable. We can't tell the future. What we know for certain, though, is we each bet $1. So the dealer deals 2 aces. So in blackjack, the right call is to split the aces and double down our bets. Except I'm out of money and you're not. So you put $2 more down. So now you bet $3 and I bet $1. We still don't know the future, how much we're going to win or how long it's going to take to win, or even if we're going to win. We're hopeful or optimistic, but we don't know the future. What we know for certain, though, is you bet $3 and I bet $1. If we win, does 50-50 sound fair?
No.
Should be 75-25, right?
Yep.
Your share of the winnings should reflect your share of the bets. That's a logical, obvious, unambiguous conclusion. There's no way I can argue it. I can argue that, hey, we shook on it, right? We had a deal for 50-50. I could sue you and probably win because we had a legal agreement. But just because we agreed to it doesn't make it fair. We agreed to a future we don't understand. When you observe what actually happens, it becomes clear that just based on logic, that you should have 75, I should have 25. Your share of the winnings, your share of the success of that endeavor should be based on your share of the bets. And bets in business are all quantifiable. It starts the same way, but instead of betting on cards, you're betting on ideas. And you bet time and money and relationships and facilities and supplies and equipment. All those things are quantifiable. The value of your bet is always equal to the unpaid portion of the fair market value of your contribution. So if you're worth $100,000 a year, and I don't pay you $100,000, at the end of the first year, you've bet $100,000 unpaid salary. You're not a magical leprechaun. You can't bet more than that. And you're not a slave, so you can't bet less than that. You can only bet what you're worth. So keep track of the bets. You always know what the equity split should be.
So let's say, for example, if you and I wanted to partner on a business, is it that our intention is 50-50, but technically we're at 0-0, and depending on who contributes what as we move forward, is that how it kind of works?
Our intention is to create a project that can stand on its own 2 feet. So our intention is to create a business or a real estate deal or a creative project that can make money. And it makes money at break even or Series A. That's what we can start going for. So that's our intention. Now, what we're actually going to do to create that end result is anybody's guess. We can hope that we'll go 50, we do half the work each, and we're going to plan on cooperating and sharing the workload. We don't know for sure. So we start with nothing, because on day one, we haven't done anything yet. Technically on day one, we're 50-50 because we've both done exactly nothing to produce actually nothing. But as we start contributing and betting, in fact, then we'll start knowing what our shares will be over time.
Okay. And how do you combat, like, let's just say I feel like I did more work than you. I feel like I've done 80% of the work and you've done 20% of the work. How do you deal with something like that? Who judges what's fair?
Well, we'll know that because we can determine in advance what our contributions should be. So, for instance, we will say you are a real estate investor with a certain number of years' experience, and you've written a book, and you have this great podcast, and you have skills and connections and experience. You're worth $150,000 a year. Maybe do you have a consulting rate that you charge people?
I do with my new coaching.
Okay, so what's your hourly rate?
So right now it's close to $250 an hour, and then I'll go to $500.
All right, so that's your fair market rate.
Yes.
So if there's a market for that and you've been able to charge for that, that's your rate. That's $250 an hour is, by the way, $500,000 a year. Depends on what the project is. It seems kind of high for some things, but for coaching, maybe okay.
Yes.
But my rate might be $30 an hour. So if you work, let's just say it's $25 an hour. So every hour you work is worth 10 of my hours. So all we got to do is keep track of our time, and we'll know what the actual contributions have been. Now, if I'm padding my time and putting on more hours and not being very productive, you would call me out on that, right? You'd say, gosh, Mike, it took you 10 hours to write a blog post. It seems kind of like a lot of time. Maybe we should hire somebody else to do that. So we can manage our project based on what we know about the project and based on what people's inputs are. But all we got to do is track what I would pay you if I was going to pay you. The question is always the same. If I was to hire you, how would I pay you and how much would I pay you? So I'd pay you on a weekly basis, an hourly basis, a project basis, or whatever that might be. And then I'd determine how much I would pay you for that. And then if I don't pay you, then it's considered a bet. If I do pay you, it's not. So whatever you do is what you do. I manage you the way I would manage anyone else. In a partnership, you're kind of managing each other. I would observe your work, you would observe my work, and we would decide together if it's worth moving forward with.
So communication is really important then.
Extremely.
Yeah.
I always suggest people have a project goal or a corporate goal, and then break it down for individual goals and milestones. So in real estate, the end result is have a place that's rehabbed and ready to sell. That's the end result. That's the goal for a certain amount of money. And there's a budget associated with that. So there's a vision for what you want to do. And then each of us have our parts to that. Your part is doing the insurance and the legal and the financing. Mine's fixing the toilets, for instance. So we would have goals. My goal is to fix the bathroom, fix the kitchen, fix the floors, fix the paint. There's different project goals I have. And along the way, for each person, there's something called a milestone. A milestone is an input to my goal. Like your milestone for my bathroom project may be to pick the fixtures out, pick the colors out, or get the paint, or procure the paint. So it's a step along the path. If we're working together, I can observe how good you are at meeting milestones, delivering what you're supposed to deliver. I can observe how good I am at meeting goals, and I can observe how close we are to our end goal. So if you miss your milestones, that's an early warning system that we're going to miss our project goal. So communication is about setting expectations and setting how and understanding how we're going to cooperate. So you may be the financing person, but I have to give you the inspection report in order for you to get the financing. This is what our collaboration is. But too often people just kind of get together and they just do stuff. I'm going to go out and do brand. I'm going to go out and do marketing, and they're not clear and deliberate about what they're supposed to be doing. So having your corporate goal in mind and your individual goals and milestones in mind will help you keep that communication clear.
Can you talk a little bit about capital contribution versus somebody contributing time? Like, how do you, is time and capital the same?
So there's two kinds of contributions you can make to a company. There are cash contributions, which require you to take cash out of your pocket and buy stuff. So I buy supplies, I buy equipment, I pay rent, I pay for a lawyer. It takes cash out of my pocket. Mm-hmm. And there's non-cash, which are things that don't require cash out of my pocket, which is like my time. I don't take cash out of my pocket, or an unpaid commission, or an unpaid royalty. Royalty is non-cash. Or if I had a room like this in my building I already owned, that's non-cash. I'm not consuming cash by providing it to the company. So cash has a different, I call it weight or measure of non-cash. So if I paid you $100 an hour to work for me, and you wanted to buy a thing like a microphone that cost $100, mm-hmm. It would take you more than an hour to earn enough money. Because when I paid you, I'd pay employment taxes and Social Security taxes. When you received the money, you'd pay income taxes. And when you bought the thing, you'd pay sales tax or VAT tax. So it may take you 2 hours to earn enough money. So for that reason, you have to smooth out, normalize between cash and non-cash. So in the slicing pie model, I use a fictional unit called a slice, which is like a poker chip. Okay. For every dollar in non-cash you contribute, you're betting 2 poker chips, 2 slices. For every dollar in cash, you get 4 slices or 4 poker chips. This marks the fact that bet took place. So by normalizing that, now you have an incentive to provide cash, and the cash is properly weighed against non-cash to make sure that those inputs are treated equally.
Okay. So you just mentioned the whole pie thing. Can you talk about like why do you call it slicing pie? Like, what's the concept behind it?
So the pie represents a pie chart of ownership. So dividing the pie is, we have a pie chart, and it breaks down percentages. What percentage do you get versus what percentage do I get? Most companies, most teammates divide up equity at the outset of the venture. So we'll say, what are we going to get? You'll get 51%, I'll get 49% because you're the brains operation, and I'm not. Or it was your idea, so you want to keep more. Or usually we just go, screw it, let's keep it simple, 50-50. That's called a fixed equity split. That means we set the equity up front, we set the pie up front, mm-hmm. and then we fight about it later. So we renegotiate it later. So if you're not pulling your weight, then I would have an issue with that. If we want to bring a third person in, I'd have an issue with that. So I have to renegotiate. So I call it fix and fight. Fix the split up front, then fight about it later. With slicing pie, it's called a dynamic model. So the pie is considered fluid. And so as we contribute and make bets, we're just adding poker chips to the table. So the slices accumulate. And at any given time, our ownership of the project is my slices divided by all the slices. Just like in poker, in blackjack, it was your chips divided by all the chips. And as you add more chips to the table, your bet changes. And when you are paid for your contribution in full, then the betting stops. Now you know what your ownership is.
Okay, so can we maybe, just for our audience, just for them to understand, walk through a scenario? Let's say you and I are going in on buying, we want to start up a coffee shop. And we have an intention to go 50-50, or we're starting 50-50 because we haven't contributed. Can you talk about what a fair model would look like when we're opening up a coffee shop?
So the first thing to do is to determine our fair market rates for the work we're going to provide.
Okay.
You're going to be the coffee shop manager, and I'm going to be the barista.
Okay.
And for that service, the fair market rate for a coffee shop manager with your skills and experience is, let's say, $120,000 a year. So I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. Okay.
Let's just say my skills and experience has nothing to do with coffee. So would you still apply that fair market value?
Yeah, yes. So you take your skills and experience into account. So you probably wouldn't be worth $120,000 if you don't know how to run a coffee shop. You're probably more like $60,000. That makes sense? So you could be a neurosurgeon, and if you're flipping burgers, you're worth a flipping burger rate, not a neurosurgeon rate.
Got it. Yes.
So I use the rate that if you're a neurosurgeon and you want to flip burgers, you'll quit your job as a neurosurgeon and start flipping burgers. So it depends on the skills, experience, and requirements of the job. And these are things that people negotiate all the time. Mm-hmm. You negotiate. If I hire a coffee shop manager, I want to hire someone with skills and experience. If you're the de facto coffee shop manager, then you don't have skills and experience. You're worth less. Now, as you get those skills and experience, you'll be worth more, and over time, I'll give you raises. And as your performance goes well, you deserve raises. But in the beginning, it's whatever your skills are. And if I'm a trained barista that has 10 years experience at Starbucks, then I'm worth $20 an hour.
Makes sense.
So then we just go about doing that job. And the job of a coffee shop manager is to manage the coffee shop. But in this case, we're building the coffee shop, so we got to build it out.
Yes.
And we got to acquire the materials. And you're still getting paid your coffee shop manager rate. Okay. Because that's kind of what your job is. It's going to go into that. And we just keep track of how I pay you. So if you're working full time, I pay you a biweekly salary. If I can't pay you, then it's a bet. So I treat it as slices in the pie. If I can't pay you, then we're square. In fact, if I paid your full salary, you don't get any equity because you're paid in full. And most people have jobs like that. Have you had a real job before?
Yes, I have. I've been in corporate for like 20 years.
And you got paid a salary?
Yes, I did.
And you were perfectly happy with that salary?
Well, I don't think anyone's perfectly happy with the salary. You always want more, but you always want more. But I was pretty content.
You negotiated that salary going into it, and you couldn't have done better because other people with your same skills could take the job. If you went to your employer and said, "I want twice as much money," they'd say, "Well, we don't need you anymore. We'll hire someone that can do your job." So the market sort of determines those rates.
Okay.
And you didn't get any equity in those businesses because you're paid in full.
Yes.
If you're paid in full, it's not a bet. So if it's a bet, it means you're not paid in full. And the amount that you should be paid is your fair market rate. So if I don't pay your fair market rate, then it's a bet.
Okay. So in our partnership, as a manager, I get paid the fair market rate, and you're the barista, so you get paid.
If we have the cash. If we don't have the cash, then our unpaid salary is a bet.
Unpaid salary is a bet, so that's equity.
It turns into equity.
And turns into equity. Okay.
So we got to count the bets until betting is no longer required. When the shop opens up, we start generating revenue, then you can start paying your salaries. And I no longer have to bet. At that point, the pie naturally stops accumulating slices, and I can observe what percentage I own versus what you own. Just like in blackjack, you had 3 chips, I had 1 chip. It's unambiguous about how much we each deserve.
Okay. And what if in our scenario we had an investor who gave us $100,000 to start this? How would that work?
So there's 3 types of investors. There are people like you and me who forgo salary and expenses in exchange for slices in the pie. I call them grunts. You might have referred to as a grunt fund. There are people who invest their own money in amounts that are too small to fund your operation in full. I call them mom or dad or friend or angel investor. And the third type of investor is someone who invests other people's money in amounts that are large enough to fully fund your operation. That means pay your salaries, pay your rent, pay your everything. Those are called institutional investors or venture capitalists or professional investors. So an angel investor, which what you're describing, someone who provides $100,000, should get what's called a convertible note. A convertible note is basically a loan that says at some point in the future when you raise money or do a priced round on your shares, it'll convert at that rate. So that doesn't count towards the pie because you're betting somebody else's money, not your own. Okay,
so that investor just gets a return.
Yeah, it gets a
and
loan.
they don't have equity in the company.
Right, unless it's a converted equity. They'd be triggered to convert it to equity under certain terms. But it's foolish for me to think I can take the coffee shop example. I don't know how much my coffee shop is worth. There's no way for me to calculate it. As the owner, I can just at best guess. And if I go to someone and say my coffee shop is worth $1 million, now I'm doing what's called a priced round. And the SEC will have all kinds of issues with that. So I have to do what's called a private placement memorandum. It's a big legal thing. So small amounts of money should just get loans or convertible loans.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, like I said, I really found your book eye-opening. Just for the audience, it's called Slicing Pie. It's really, really good. I think you should order yourself a copy. And I want to know, what inspired you to write the book?
Well, like I said before, I was an entrepreneur, and I founded a lot of different companies, and I always wanted to have help. I remember one time I had a T-shirt company in college that paid for college for me. And when my friend said, "I want to be your salesperson, I'll go in 50-50 with you." And I thought to myself, here I am, I built the company, I had equipment and supplies, and I had customers and catalogs and an office, and this guy's going to get half what I make? It didn't make sense to me. Something made sense, but I didn't know what it was. And I wound up not doing that deal with that guy. I just wound up just paying him cash. And I got to business school, and I started a company, and I asked my professors, they're basically telling me to guess. They're saying, treat it like $1 million, and how much is it worth? And they'd ask me to project future projections. And then I started another company where I had a partner who had a lot more experience than I did. And we wrote the contract. I took equity. I had equity instead of compensation, instead of full compensation. And he wrote one line in the third version of the operating agreement. Every time someone joined the company, we'd re-sign the operating agreement. And there's one line in there that allowed him to buy my equity back for next to nothing, and then turn around and sell it for possibly millions when he sold the company. And all along the way, I said that there must be a better way. There's got to be a better way. So the original version of Slicing Pie was basically a rant on people taking advantage of each other.
Okay.
And it was kind of an anti-lawyer, slick deals. The lawyer had written these deals to protect the owner, my co-founder, not me. And over time, I realized that fairness is a universal truth. If we're siblings and our dad gives us a cookie, how do we split the cookie?
In half.
In half, because we both paid equal amounts of nothing to get it. We inherently know that's fair. If I took a bigger half from the cookie, you'd be mad at me, right? You'd instinctually know that it was not fair.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how many calories I want to consume. But yeah, in your scenario,
you're still entitled to half the cookie.
I am, yeah.
You can give me your half, but your generosity doesn't make it more fair.
Yeah.
I could steal your half, my greed doesn't make it more fair. What's fair is we should split the cookie. Now, if you bought the cookie, you paid for it, you don't have to give me anything, right?
Right.
That's perfectly fair.
Yes.
If you paid for half of it and your dad paid for half of it, now your dad owns half of it. The fairness is sort of a universal truth. And it has to do with how much we contribute towards the acquisition of that benefit, what the payoff is. And in the cookie example, it's enjoying the cookie. So I wrote Slicing Pie has evolved over the years to represent sort of what happens in business to be fair. And because business is unique in that we can quantify everything, we can know exactly what the inputs are. Like a murder trial isn't very easy to quantify. Your emotions aren't easy to quantify, but your work and your labor and your expenses are very easy to quantify. So in business is one place we can get it perfectly fair. The world is just basically guessing what equity split should be. I never sat comfortably with me, so I wanted a way to manage that. And incidentally, the betting concept determines how you get shares. There's also recovery when you leave the company. That's one of the most disruptive parts of the company, and how you get shares back is important too. So your next question should be about that.
Go ahead.
There's 4 reasons why someone can leave a company.
Okay.
They can be fired for cause, which means they did something so negligent they clearly should be about embezzlement or sexual harassment or something like that.
Okay. Or
more likely they had a performance issue. You weren't pulling your weight, and I should give you warning, fired. So firing for cause means warning, fired in my book. So you can be fired for cause. You can also be fired for no reason. I can just fire you one day. Just decide I don't want to work with you anymore. That's my right. You're fired. You can also resign for good reason. Resigning for good reason implies that the deal somehow changed. It's no longer what you signed up for. So I might say, you're in charge of financing for our venture. Now you're in charge of cleaning the toilets. That's not what you signed up for, right? So you have good reason to resign. Or we're based in Chicago, moving to Seattle, pack your bags, get your kids in the car. That's not what you signed up for, right?
Right.
Or your compensation is $100,000 a year. We're going to drop that to $40,000 a year. You have good reason to resign. And the last reason is resigning for no good reason. It means you just decided you didn't want to be part of the deal anymore. You just walked away from it. If you were a solo entrepreneur and you walked away from your deal or you didn't do the job, what would happen to your company?
It would be gone.
You lose it. So the same happens here. If you up and quit, you lose your slices. If you get fired for cause, you lose your slices. Providing, it's painful to lose your slices, as it should be. If you want to participate in the winnings, don't quit. Don't walk away. On the flip side of the coin, if you are resigning for good reason or you're fired for no good reason, your bet stays on the table and will convert with equity with everybody else. So you'll get the benefit of that based on what you contributed. So no matter what happens, no matter what decisions you make, how hard you're going to work, how little you're going to work, Slicing Pie always adjusts to stay fair over time. That's what's called a dynamic model. It self-adjusts to stay fair as things change.
So do you have people coming to you today asking for advice on how to set up partnerships? Is that something that you do?
Yes,
You
I do
help with?
hundreds and hundreds of calls. But
Oh, you do? Okay.
I've done. There's a service called Clarity that I've been doing. I've done like 1,500 calls with this company on this point exactly, on what do I do when I get into a partnership? How do I split up equity? And just clarifying, what your compensation should be and how to keep track of it and how to determine things and what to do if someone gets let go. I just spoke to a company that started a guy that started a rocketry company, an aerospace company using Slicing Pie.
Oh, nice.
And starting an aerospace company is kind of a long-term play, as you might imagine. It takes 10 years. And over that 10 years, 19 people have joined the company and subsequently left the company. And Slicing Pie has protected them each time based on the nature of that separation. Without Slicing Pie, he would have to buy out these people every time or renegotiate every time or have a bunch of absentee owners. But these people joined and left knowing what the consequences were. And so there was no problem with that. So 19 people is a lot of people to come and go over a period of time. But the people who stuck with them are compensated properly. Those who didn't lose appropriately. So it's really important to know going into it. Like we said before, what kind of partner you choose a partner that gets the model. That way we don't have to be friends. We don't have to be co-workers. We don't have to even know each other. There's another case study about this company that they never met each other. They met on Reddit. They started this company together using Slicing Pie, and their actions paid off, not their promises. And they exited the company a few years later, and they had a nice exit, and they're all good friends still. Because Slicing Pie accommodates your behavior, it accommodates your decisions, it accommodates the changes, it accommodates the unknowns, no matter what happens.
I've heard that 70% of businesses fail, like with partnerships, as we mentioned earlier. If they use the Slicing Pie model, in your experience, what percentages have failed due to partnerships?
That's difficult to answer. I can tell you that most companies fail because they're not very good ideas.
Okay.
And Slicing Pie companies fail at a rate that's as high as the regular population. Sure. Mostly because if you're going into a company with no money at all and you're trying to raise money, I mean, you're basically working on smoke and mirrors for the first 6 or 8 months. So the chance of failure is pretty high. But there have been some nice success stories of Slicing Pie. It's been used by thousands of companies all over the world. I've never heard of a company failing because of Slicing Pie.
Okay.
I've heard a lot of companies say that my partnership was saved because of Slicing Pie or enabled because of Slicing Pie. And so what I tell people is your equity split doesn't determine success. It determines how you'll experience success. So my company I told you about a minute ago, my partner, we had a nice exit, multi-million-dollar exit. I got burned because the way I experienced success was getting taken advantage of. So my experience of success was different. I was with a company once where this number 2 employee was a retired General Motors customer service rep. And he started the company with the founder, and they sold it 6 or 8 years later for like $350 million. The customer service rep made $5 million. This is more money than he ever imagined making. He was successful beyond his wildest dreams. He was irate. He was super angry because his co-founder, made over $300 million. So they had basically done the same amount of work. But the deal was so far off what was fair. The way he experienced this wild success was extremely aggravating and frustrating and disappointing for him because it was so lopsided. So what people want is to be treated fairly and get what they deserve. If that doesn't happen, then that's a problem. I was with a company, that same company, I joined that company, and I got equity. And they sold 9 months after I joined, and I got accelerated equity, so I got more than I deserved. That was fun. I don't know who to give the money back to. It was unfair in my favor. But at the same time, I'm singing a happy tune, and other people are crying about it because they got taken advantage of. And with traditional equity splits, there's no way of unwinding that successfully. You see, there's movies about this, Facebook movies about bad equity splits. Most corporate movies of screwing partners is about the equity split.
Absolutely. So let's shift gears a little bit. We want to know more about you. Just tell us a little bit about, do you have family, where you grew up, a little bit about your background and your personal history.
Well, I grew up partially in Kansas and partially in Boston area. And I started as an entrepreneur when I used to be really into animals. I liked animals a lot. And at one time I had 50 pets.
You used to be into animals?
Into animals when I was in high school.
Okay. And you had 50 pets
50
at
pets.
once?
At once I had pigeons, and I had geese, and I had dogs, and I had rabbits. And I tried to breed my rabbits a lot. And one day my rabbits, after failing and failing and failing, one day my rabbits had 25 baby rabbits. So I was inundated with baby rabbits. And I didn't know what to do with them. And my aunt said, Michael, take these to this. There's an art fair going downtown. Take a box of these things and sell them for $25 each. This is back in the 80s. That seems kind of high. She said, sell them for as high a price as you can. Make sure people hold them. If they hold them, they'll buy one because they're super cute. And I took that box of bunnies downtown and I sold every single one except for one for $25 each that day. And the next day, somebody who had bought the rabbit left it out in the sun and it died. And they came back to my house asking if they could buy the last rabbit. And I said, sure, you're probably the only ones who take good care of your rabbit now. So I sold all those rabbits, and that came the entrepreneurship bug. And I said, this is going to be a thing. I could produce a product or a service, and I could sell it, and this is cool. And I put myself through college with a startup company, and I started a company in graduate school, which ultimately failed. And I started another company that was successful, and I just kind of bounced around. So I spent most of my time starting companies, and I have 3 kids now, and I try to start companies with them. So
you've got them into
I got them into entrepreneurship. My son, I started this camping gear company with, and so we're now a big distributor, big supplier to scouting for Boy Scout camps. My daughter has a cotton candy business called Tada Treats, and my third son, we started a business selling lacrosse games that didn't do too well. Well, my daughter expressed an interest in studying entrepreneurship in college. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And my wife said, don't encourage her. Entrepreneurship is so hard making money. And it's so hard to make a living. Don't it's too stressful. Don't encourage her to do that.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of funny because it's a hard way to make a living. But from my perspective, it's a safe way to make a living because having multiple revenue streams means I can't lose. If I lose any one of them, who cares? When I worked for the man, I would lose the job and be upset because my whole revenue stream went away. So I was good at getting jobs, lousy at keeping jobs.
So you mentioned something that your wife said. It's hard to make money, right?
Right.
I'm sure along your entrepreneurial journey, you've had quite a few challenges, probably, more failures in the beginning until you actually get to see some positive results, right? So talk a little bit about how did you keep your head up and keep going when you came across those circumstances?
Well, my first experience with entrepreneurship, I did really well. I put myself through college. They weren't huge successes, but they paid for our college. I was a rich kid in college. I had a car and the motorcycle and the cash to spend. It was fun. And I was kind of cocky coming out of college. And I went to graduate school at Northwestern and had a good job after that. Then we invested in the stock market and got more money, and I was feeling pretty good about myself. And then I got married, bought a house, and had a baby. And my wife wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And I started a company at the same time. And I spent all of my money on that. All of it.
All of it, okay.
I thought it was going to go wildly successful like most entrepreneurs. And it failed. I lost all my money. So we had a mortgage, a wife, a baby, and no job, and no money.
So you had to start from scratch pretty much.
I took another job with another company that was a startup. That was when I told you I got more money. And we sold a year later. I made all my money back and then some.
Nice, okay.
But I learned a couple things. One, that you could lose it all pretty quick. So I don't double down. I don't bet big anymore. I try to save money. Saving money is the most important thing. And I also knew you got to have a very supportive spouse in order to make this work. So my wife has been very supportive of this thing. But when I was in college, I was scared of losing. So I saved money to pay for tuition, books, room and board. That was $2,500 a semester. Didn't seem like a lot, but at the time it was. So I always kept $2,500 in the bank. And nowadays I make sure I have living expenses for at least a year or two of a runway in case things fall apart. But a lot of things I start fail. Most of the books I've written don't sell very well. Slicing Pie is an exception. But you keep trying things. One of my early jobs was at Bissell. They make vacuum cleaners and deep cleaning machines. And the customer service manager, in an attempt to insult me, said, Mike, all you do is throw shit at a wall and see what sticks. And I thought to myself, that's a great career. That's what I'm going to do. That's exactly what I want to do. I want to throw shit at a wall and see what sticks. Yeah. And that's what I did. I just produce stuff as quickly as I can and see what works, what doesn't work. If it doesn't work, I can abandon it. If it does work, I can go with it.
Were your parents entrepreneurs?
Sort of. My dad was a doctor.
Okay.
And ran his own practice.
Okay.
And unfortunately, doctors aren't trained very much in business, so they make a lot of money, but they don't manage the business very well. So I saw the struggles he had. And my mom was an interior designer, and she ran her own business. And her advice to me was always very conservative. Like, don't extend credit to anybody. Don't take any loans out. So I've always had kind of a conservative slant. I've been overly conservative that way. But my real influence was selling those rabbits and doing things on my own.
Okay. So you teach at Northwestern University currently, entrepreneurship?
Yeah.
What is, if we were all your students here, what's a couple takeaways that you would give us in terms of entrepreneurship?
One of the biggest things I try to teach in my classes is that marketing comes first, then product. If you have a market for stuff, you can plug into it. You can sell them anything. If you don't have a market, you can't sell them anything. So, for example, if you have a bunch of people who want to rent properties, then buy the properties and rent them to them. If you have, like, Slicing Pie is a good example. The first thing I did with Slicing Pie was I wrote a white paper, and I started distributing it. And then I wrote the book and started distributing it, and then I wrote the blog. And so I had people asking me for software. So then I created the software and plugged it right in, so I had an instant market. If I had created the software first, no one would have understood it. And my first failure was building too much technology too soon and not getting the market first. I should have gone out and sold the concept first, marketed the concept first, gotten the people first, and then sold them something. And that's been one of the biggest things I teach is try to get the market first. If you can't get the market, then your product doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
That makes sense. And in that scenario where you said go out and sell your service or product first before completely developing it, I'm the actual opposite, where I want to make sure that everything is perfect,
right,
like my service and product, before I go. So for somebody like me, like, what tips would you give me so that I think maybe it's more comes from like an security, like I'm not sure if my product is going to work or service is going to work. So I just need to make sure 100% that it's going to work. So what kind of tips would you give somebody like me?
Well, the only way to make sure it works is to sell it. If no one buys it, you can't sell it. But in your case, in real estate, there already is a market. The market is known.
Yeah.
So it's not. It's the investment is quote unquote safe because there's security against the property. There's market values already. In a tech company or a new product company, there's no underlying equity or financial valuation to the business. So your chance of failing horribly in real estate is less than your chance of failing horribly in tech startups, for instance. But you
just go out there and sell the concept and see if there's a market for it, and then develop it on the back end.
Right.
Okay.
So this happens like I was talking to a woman about wanting to create a clothing exchange for people who wanted to trade prom dresses. This always comes up. The prom dress you wear it once, you got to resell it.
Oh yeah.
So they want to build a software and an app and this platform. Don't do that. Just get people together and try to sell their dresses. If you can gather people who want to sell dresses and get dresses, then you can prove that there's a market for it. Then you can build software to make it easier to do it, rather than go out and build software. Another guy came to me recently, had a new kind of electrical outlet. And he said, he wanted to raise $200,000 to build the tooling and get the approval for the electronic components. So $200,000, why don't you spend $200,000 on marketing and pre-sell 500,000 units, then you'll have the money to build it. So you can build the thing and have the tooling and have the production, have it all great, but if no one's there to buy it, who cares?
Right.
He says, but I have a designer ready to do it. Yeah, he's ready to charge you $200,000. He's got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So it's about getting the market first. That's one of the most important lessons that I've learned in my career is get the market first.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really, insightful.
Thank you.
Insightful. So how do, Mike, how do people get if someone wants to get in touch with you and get to know you more, how do they get in touch with you?
All emails lead to me eventually through slicingpie.com.
Okay.
So you go to slicingpie.com. That's my main website. But also at mikemoyer.com if you want to look at my other books.
Okay.
But I always try to respond as quickly as I can through social media. The email contact form on slicingpie.com is the best way to get a hold of me.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. It was an amazing talking to you and learning, all the tips. And I'm definitely going to be using your model if I ever get into partnerships because I thought, like I said, it was phenomenal. So thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yep. Thank you.